Over Thanksgiving, I had 3 Thanksgiving meals and I gained 7 pounds in a week. And she was like, you're going to end up with gestational diabetes if you're not careful. And you're going to have a really big baby if you're not careful. So you need to slow down on your eating. And I was like,
it was Thanksgiving.
And I had 3 Thanksgiving dinners to go to. What are you talking about?
I'm Kayla Heater, follower of Jesus, wife and mother of 6 children, Christian childbirth educator and doula, and your host of the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, where we share God-centered birth stories, evidence-based birth education, and our pursuit of surrendering our birth plans to God. Let's get started. Hello, hello, hello. Happy week, everybody. I hope your week is off to a great start or is currently great wherever you are in the week. I just got home from teaching childbirth class. It was awesome. It was postpartum week, so we got to talk all about what happens after the baby comes out and, in the hours, days, and weeks and months following. So love that. Love that week. And I also love it because, fall is my favorite season. Hands down, fall is my favorite season. But I love the summer skies, like at the end of the night when it's super humid. If you watch my stories the last week or two, you will see me posting what I consider God clouds in the sky. And those are like those big, massive, like clouds that look like they're off in the distance, but the sun is setting. So there's like beautiful color and like, it looks like cotton candy and it's just so pretty. And I just sit and stare at the sky. And I think it's like, you cannot deny a creator when you look at a canvas of a sky like that. So thoroughly enjoy my drive home from class when I get to look at the amazing clouds. Also, guys, had an absolute blast last night. My husband and I got to go to one of our friends' birthday parties. It was her 30th birthday, and they themed it field day, like the field games that like you would play in school on field day. So there was like 3-legged race and the spinning around the bats and tug of war and all the things. It was so much fun, you guys. There were 24 adults and we were split into like 4 teams of 6 and everyone had a bandana with like their color for their team. And we competed in all these different, events and tallied up points. And there was like a winner at the end and everything. It was so much fun. Really got to like jump back into my, inner child during that time. And so if you're looking for a good theme for a birthday party, I highly recommend the field day theme. My team came in second place, but I was really proud of us because we were the underdogs because we were in last place for like the first half of the event. So we came back and got all the way up to second. And I attribute it to our 3-legged race conquering, which was great. So much fun. So much fun. So Meredith, Anthony, if you are listening to this, happy 30th birthday. I love you. I'm so glad I got to be at your birth. So glad that we are friends. And I'm so glad that you decided to have a field day birthday party. Okay, if you missed it last week, which I know last week's episode not everyone listened to because it was a tough subject matter, we really deep dived into miscarriage. And so I understand skipping that episode or, waiting to a different time to listen to it. I do think it's super informative though. But I did announce on the intro of last week that I'm going to be doing a sale on Labor Day for the online birth course. So if you've been thinking about taking the online birth course, debating it, trying to figure out when to do it, when not to do it, if you can wait a couple more weeks, I would do that because we're going to have a Labor Day sale. That's going to be the kickoff to the 4th season of the podcast, which is wild to think we're starting season 4. I had 2 less kids when we started this podcast, so it's crazy. So just wait a couple weeks if you are planning on purchasing the online birth course. Okay, let's jump into this week's episode, which I'm going to say is a 2-part episode. So this is week 1, part 1 of this story. So if you want to hear the rest of her story, the redemptive part of her story, please come back next week and listen to part 2. When your husband is a paramedic and you watch lots of birth videos, what else is there to need going into your first unmedicated birth and a hospital birth at that? Well, while Rebekah's first labor went quickly and smoothly, the actual delivery did not. A supposed shoulder dystocia and then a quick cutting of the cord and whisking away of her baby would leave her traumatized and completely alone. If that wasn't enough, she would practically be held hostage at the hospital for the next several days with NICU policies and threats of rare and dangerous diseases her perfectly healthy baby did not have. All of this would feed directly into her postpartum experience, not to mention her deep second-degree tear, leaving her anxious, fearful, and altogether unwell. How could she go on to have another baby after all of that? Well, welcome to another episode of Surrendered Birth Stories. I am your host, Kayla Heater, and I have Rebekah with me today. Rebekah, why don't you just take a minute and introduce yourself and let us get to know you and your family.
Okay, I'm Rebekah. I am a mom to 3 little kids. I have a 4-year-old, and that's our little girl. Her name is Esther. And then a 2.5-year-old named George, and then a 7-week-old named Gideon. And we live in Northern Kentucky. My husband is a first responder. He's a paramedic. So I live a life of solo parenting for 24 hours at a time, which goes into some of like how our postpartum and how our labors have happened. So yeah, I stay at home. I love it. We're getting ready to start some school with our kids this fall. I know it's a little early, but I'm just excited to like get to do more intentional time with them.
Yeah. So you're going to homeschool then?
Yes. I was homeschooled. I'm one of 5 and I was homeschooled. My husband is one of 9 and he was also homeschooled.
That's fun. We homeschool as well, except it was something I never envisioned doing because my husband and I grew up in the public school system. So I did not understand homeschool for a long time, but now we are 4 years into it. And I don't think I could ever go back. So,
yeah, I have a lot of friends who come and pick my brain because they're like, we didn't grow up in this. What do you think we should do?
Yeah.
I don't remember being homeschooled at a young age. I remember what it was like when I was older. So it's kind of fun to get to start that process and see what that's like start to finish instead of just what I remember as a child, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, let's dive in to your birth stories. Okay. So take us back. You have a 4-year-old. Tell us about the journey to getting pregnant for the first time.
Okay. So the journey to get pregnant the first time, it was not hard to get pregnant, but I remember my husband and I, we went out to Kansas for a really good friend's wedding. And around that time, we had decided to stop preventing and just see what happens. We were like, when we get back in January, we'll just stop preventing. And so we did. And then I had like the worst period of my entire life right after we stopped preventing. I wasn't on birth control or anything like that, but I just remember that cycle stuck out as like really painful, a lot heavier than normal, and just not normal for me. And then about 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. Or 3 weeks later, I guess, I found out that I was pregnant. And my sisters had both said that when they had found out that they were pregnant, it had followed like a really hard, intense cycle for them as well, which is very weird. I don't know why that is the way that it was, but we were very excited to get that positive pregnancy test. And I started looking into like all of the prenatals and where I wanted to give birth and how I was going to go about that. And then where we live, there's one hospital that has a monopoly on the area. And then you have to cross the river to get to hospitals that are different. And my husband, being the first responder, he was like, I don't want you to give birth at the hospital that's closest to us. He's just had some less than ideal run-ins there. And so he was like, I really don't want you to have a baby at that hospital. So we ended up going to there's like these clinics that have women's care. They have OB/GYNs and midwives, and then they deliver at hospitals in the area. So we started going with one of those clinics, and they did an ultrasound and all of these things for that pregnancy. And then about 2 weeks into that pregnancy, I started spotting. So about mid-February, I was spotting pretty heavily. And then I went back in for an ultrasound and there was no detectable heartbeat. So we ended up miscarrying our first child. And in the time frame of us finding out we're pregnant and establishing care at this clinic, I was using the midwives and they did away with their midwife program. So all of the midwives that were established there got scattered to different locations, different hospitals and things like that. So going into like grief and then being like, what am I supposed to do? When and if I get pregnant again, where are we supposed to go? I'm not entirely sure. And there was one midwife there that I really, really liked, but they weren't allowed to tell me where she ended up. So I even called them and was like, hey, I want to be able to follow this care provider. And they said, we can't give that information out. So my husband, his name is Tim. We were both just like, we'll have to see what happens in the future, I guess. So I started praying, just being like, God, make clear which hospital I'm supposed to go to in the future. And I've always had an inkling we would go to this specific hospital. It's a Good Samaritan hospital, and they have one of the highest ranked NICUs in the area. And so I always just knew, like, if I was going to have a baby at a hospital, that's where I would probably go. And being someone who has always liked the birth industry, I was really particular about where I would want to go. I wanted someone with like a more natural place. I also happened to be born at Good Samaritan Hospital. 4 of my mom's 5 kids were born at that hospital. Just felt pretty easy to make that decision, but also with there being so many hospital options, it was weird. Like you just don't know exactly where you're supposed to go, you know? So we ended up deciding, like, we had a family vacation at the end of May. And we were told after one cycle, you can start trying to have a baby again. And I was just in such an emotionally volatile spot that I was like, I don't know what to do. And we had decided to wait to try to get pregnant until after our vacation. So starting around June, we would try again, like actually try to get pregnant, not just see what happens. So back in March, my brother was home from Okinawa, Japan. He was a Marine out there. And it was one of the first times we had seen all of them. And I was like 3 weeks late to my cycle. I had one period and then it just vanished. And I had taken 3 pregnancy tests and was like, where is this period at? So I guess it's April now. I went to the doctor and I told him, I was like, my period's not coming back. I've had one and it's just gone now. Can we take a pregnancy test? And he was like, well, have you taken pregnancy tests at home? And I said, yeah, and they've all been negative. And he was like, well, then it's not going to be positive here. So let's just save you from the stress and the heartache of getting another negative pregnancy test and not take one at all. And I was like, okay, which just made me even more sad because I had this idea that what if I was pregnant and I could announce to all of my family at one time, all of us being in town while my brother's in town, who's my husband's best friend, that we could just announce to everyone that we're pregnant right now. And so being told that the odds of me being pregnant were very slim made me even more emotional. And then it was like 2 weeks after that, we're about to go on vacation. And my husband and I were sitting in bed and I just started gagging, just for no reason, just gagging. And when we had miscarried, that was the first trimester symptom that I had started experiencing was gagging. And I was gagging for no reason, just sitting in bed. It was very strange. So he was like, why don't you take a pregnancy test in the morning and just see what happens? I was like, okay, we're going to be leaving for our vacation the day after. I'll just do that. So I take a pregnancy test. And before I can even turn the test over, it's positive. And I was like, well, I guess I am pregnant. And if I had taken a pregnancy test at the doctor's office, it would have been positive, but that's okay. I was so excited and so scared at the same time because I was just like, I don't want to start bleeding.
Yeah.
So that's how we found out that I was pregnant with our daughter, Esther. And then that whole pregnancy, we decided not to find out what she was. which I thought was a lot of fun. And my husband hated it. He's not doing that ever again. So that was our compromise, was we'll do the first one and not find out. And every pregnancy after that, we will find out. I ended up feeling pretty well with her pregnancy. The prenatals that I was taking caused me to throw up a lot more. So I ended up changing it up. I don't even remember what they were at this point. That was so far ago. So we ended up telling our whole families the first week of June. So I was about 7 or 8 weeks pregnant when we started telling everyone. And it was really funny because on our vacation, one of my family members asked me if I was pregnant, and I definitely lied and said, no, I'm not. I wasn't ready to tell anyone yet.
Yeah.
I was like, you're not allowed to ask those questions. So yeah, her pregnancy was pretty easy. I was working at a coffee shop up the road from where we lived at that point, and it was a lot of fun. Everyone at that job was so excited for me to be pregnant and for it to stick this time. Yeah, they go so hand in hand that I feel like I have to share both of those stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then going into December of 2021, because that's that whole year I spent basically pregnant, I quit my job. I was due with Esther in January, mid-January. I ended up choosing to go to Good Samaritan Hospital. And lo and behold, the midwife that I really liked from that other clinic landed at that hospital as well.
Aww.
So I was so excited. And there was, I think, 12 midwives who were working there. And I liked pretty much all of them that I had met except one. There was one that I had met that I was like, I don't like you. And the only reason is because I was 105 pounds when I got pregnant.
Oh, wow. You're a little person.
I'm very skinny. So I was very skinny when I got pregnant. And over Thanksgiving, I had 3 Thanksgiving meals and I gained 7 pounds in a week. And she was like, you're going to end up with gestational diabetes if you're not careful. And you're going to have a really big baby if you're not careful. So you need to slow down on your eating. And I was like,
it was Thanksgiving.
And I had 3 Thanksgiving dinners to go to. What are you talking about? I remember leaving that appointment and calling my sister and being like, what? This is crazy. Am I crazy? So other than that one midwife, I liked all of them. And my husband and I both were like, pretty much any of the midwives there that delivered our baby, we would have been fine with. And the plan for me was no induction, no C-section. I wanted to go as naturally as possible. And my reasoning was I just wanted to prove to myself that I could, even though in my heart of hearts, I knew that I could do it. I just I felt weird saying because that's what I want to do. I felt like people would think I was judging them when I really don't care. I don't care. That's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
It felt weird to say that because in my group of friends, I was the first one to get pregnant and married. So not a lot of people in my life, other than my siblings, were having babies or doing any of that with me. So I always felt like people would think I was being judgmental when it's not judgmental to say what you want to do.
Right.
So we started doing all of this research, and I felt like I did not need a birth class or anything like that. My husband is a paramedic. He had to do clinical hours on L&D and all of those types of things. I knew he didn't really need one. He knew what a physiological birth looked like, as well as the fact that he's number 3 of 9. So he's been around his mom, and his mom has had home births. So I was like, I didn't think that he really needed that support. And I watched a bunch of natural home birth YouTube vlogs, which I found very helpful because I had never seen a start to finish labor. I had at that point 3 nieces, and one of them was a C-section, and I wasn't there for their births. But so the midwife that I wanted to follow to the hospital, she recommended that I read Ina May's book, which I did. And I ate that thing up so quickly. And I just would share little nuggets with my husband every now and again and be like, did you know this about an epidural? Or did you know this about stimulating contractions or things like that? And he was like, that's really cool. Yes, I did know that, but that's really cool that you're learning it. So I read that book, and that's pretty much the only labor prep that I did. That and watch videos, which probably is not the best thing to do. There's a lot that I wish I would have known going into that labor, but I also don't know where I would have found them. There wasn't a lot of doulas in our area at the time, and it was also during COVID. So I wasn't even sure that we would be able to have one.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm not even going to look into it because it doesn't feel like an option to me, which I regret. I wish I would have just looked into it a little bit, but that's kind of how we established our care. And we knew that whichever midwife was on call is who we were going to get. And we were okay with that. So I was at my 40-week appointment on January 19th of 2022. The midwife who was there, she's feeling my belly, and she's like, yeah, I think you have about a 7-pound baby in there. I'm not super concerned about a big baby or anything like that. The baby's low engaged. You're 1 centimeter dilated, but that's normal for a first-time mom. Like, we're not super worried about it. But on your way out, they're going to schedule you for your induction. And I was like, what do you mean they're scheduling me for an induction? You just said everything was fine. I was like, I don't even know when I conceived this baby. So I'm not super worried about going like a week or 2 over. I was very miserable and ready to not be pregnant anymore, but I was okay with going longer. And they were like, yeah, well, if you really don't want it, you can call this number and they'll reschedule it, but you can't schedule your induction yourself. Our scheduler schedules it for you. And I was like, I don't love that. So I went home and called the number and was like, I don't want my induction scheduled for next week. And she was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I can change that for you. Usually we just have moms who are so tired of being pregnant, we go ahead and schedule their induction for like the following week. And I think they had scheduled it for January 23rd, if I remember correctly, like 6 days after this appointment, which happens to be my grandfather's birthday. And I was like, yeah, I don't want it scheduled that day. Let's push it back like 2 weeks. So we did 2 weeks, exactly 42 weeks is when they would have induced me. So I just go on living my life like a very pregnant woman. And my husband and I, he had to work on January 22nd. So on the 21st, we go for a walk in our apartment complex in the rain, the snow, and the cold weather, up and down our parking lot, and like up and down multiple times, up and down. We lived on the 3rd floor, so we walked up and down 3 flights of stairs multiple times. And I was like, I need this baby to come out of me. I am just so tired of being pregnant. And so we go to bed that night, and I was like, all right, God, I'm not going to try anything. I'm not going to try anything. I'm not even going to think about going into labor or any of that. I woke up at 4 a.m. the next morning with my bags breaking. So I was like, oh, I'm just laying there, and I was like, I feel really wet. And so I went to the bathroom to make sure. And I was like, yeah, sure enough, there's some fluid there. So I go out to our living room and I call the hotline, the nurse's line, and tell them what's going on. And they were like, yeah, we're not really in a rush. I wasn't having any contractions at that point, and it wasn't like a gush. It was just a very, very slow trickle.
Yeah.
So I ate some breakfast at 4:30 in the morning. And then I decided, I was like, I'm just going to lay around and rest a little bit, maybe do some stretches. So I did some side laying and things like that on the couch. I turned on Psych. That's one of my favorite TV shows. Psych and Monk. I watch those a lot when I'm pregnant. So I was watching Psych, and then my contractions, about an hour later, I started feeling contractions.
Oh, I'm so glad. Only because I know a lot of other women whose water breaks first, especially for their first baby, and contractions don't start for like hours and hours and hours and hours, if not days. So
I'm so thankful that was like it was easy. And I knew I was in labor. There was no question. I knew it was happening. And about an hour after that, they started getting closer together and a little bit more intense, not horribly intense. So at 6:30, I started feeling like I needed some support getting through them. So I went in to wake up my husband and told him, I was like, hey, I need you to pack your hospital bag because we're going to the hospital today. And so he calls into work. So he had to work. And at that point in time, he got 3 full 72 hours of paternity leave, which is 3 days for him, which equals about a week and a half to 2 weeks, depending on where in the month they fall.
Does he work like 1 day on, 2 days off?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think with her birth, it fell on his long week. So it was a Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday. I can't remember for sure. But so he gets up and he eats breakfast. He packs his hospital bag. I decide, I start feeling like I need to go to the bathroom. So I'm sitting on the toilet. And at that point, I did not know what the toilet's nickname is in labor. And and I just felt so much relief sitting on the toilet. So I probably was on and off of the toilet for hours. And then we ended up sitting in our room laboring and there for a while. And I started being really nervous. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. It's a connective tissue disorder that makes your ligaments really flexible. And I was really concerned that it would have a weird effect on my cervix because it's connective tissue. So I was like, I don't know what that's going to mean for me, which is a main reason why I chose a hospital birth for our first, was I just didn't know how that would affect labor. So we found out that it affects my cervix by dilating very quickly. And so I had done this research, and a lot of women who have EDS have babies born in the car because they dilate so quickly. And so I was like starting to get nervous being at home and being about 35 to 40 minutes away from the hospital, just thinking, what if I am hitting transition? I'm starting to feel really like this is starting to get really hard, but I'm not hitting, just this battle in my brain thinking like, you're not that far, but my body feeling like I was that far. So we ended up calling the hospital again, and they said, it sounds like you're having a hard time breathing through them. They're about 5 to 6 minutes apart at that point. You might as well just come in and we'll check you. So we make the drive to the hospital, which was horrible.
Yeah.
And we had to pull over so I could throw up at one point, and then continued driving. And I remember saying, Tim, I'm feeling pushy in the car. And then as soon as we got to the parking lot.
Whether you're expecting your first baby or hoping for a different birth experience this time around, the Surrendered Birth Course is a comprehensive Christian childbirth course designed to prepare you for pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and breastfeeding while keeping Jesus at the center of it all. With over 12 hours of on-demand content, you'll learn how to make informed decisions, understand your options, and approach birth with confidence instead of fear. Whether you're planning a hospital birth, birth center birth, or home birth, this course will equip you with the knowledge you need and encourage you to surrender your plans to God. To learn more, read testimonials, or enroll, click the link in the show notes.
I'm feeling pushy in the car. And then as soon as we got to the parking lot, that feeling went away. We make it up to triage and they check me and I'm at a 6. I asked them if I could get away with not having an IV, but they said, we'll give you an IV in the delivery room, but you do have to have at least the port put in. And I was like, fine, whatever. I could not think at this point. I'm sitting in this triage room and I felt like I was not even in my body. Like my brain, I could barely keep my eyes open. I couldn't think of anything except here comes the next wave. At that point, I wasn't really it's very hard to explain. I couldn't really feel my contractions, but I could feel them. Like I physically couldn't feel them, but I knew that they were coming. I knew my belly was tightening, but I wasn't like experiencing what most people describe contractions to feel like.
So you weren't experiencing like the menstrual cramp intensity. So what did it feel like then?
It honestly felt like waves, like sitting in a wave pool. I felt like I was just feeling waves without the tightening, without any of that. I remember thinking like, if this is what labor is and my brain just turns off, this is easy. But I was also very emotional, not like crying. I was still very much in control, but also not in control of what my brain was thinking or where that was going. I felt like I was like, my head was above the clouds and my body was being crashed by waves. I would go as far as to say like, this birth was pretty pain-free. I didn't even believe, I always thought people were crazy when they said they had pain-free births. I was like, that's not a thing. Until I experienced one myself. I was like, that was pretty pain-free. It was very hard work and intense, but I didn't feel any pain. I don't know. It's very strange. But when we got to the room, they tried to get me an IV. They tried like 4 times. And at this point, I'm contracting every minute. And I know I'm contracting because my vessels are shortening, like getting smaller. So I have very good veins. They missed my veins like 4 times until I told them, wait till after a contraction, then do it. So they hooked me up to all of the monitors and all of that, which I wanted intermittent monitoring, but I didn't even register that they weren't giving it to me until afterwards. So they get me in the room and I end up like on my hands and knees on one of their pillows. They're like blow up things in the shower with the water beating down on my back, which felt really, really nice. And then I labor in there for like an hour and a half and sit on the bench that they have in the shower. And then there's bloody show. And that's when I started vocalizing to Tim. I was like, I cannot do this. I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can get through this. And he told me, he's like, if you want an epidural, you need to tell me right now because it's going to change our plans a little bit. And I was like, I don't want an epidural. I just feel like I can't.
When you say you can't do this, since it was pain-free, were you saying like, I can't handle this much intensity?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I was just like, I felt so disconnected. Like my brain did not feel connected to my body. And I was just like, I don't like that feeling. And it was scary. And at the same time, I knew exactly what was going on. It's such a weird, euphoric feeling almost. Like I was like, this is what people on drugs feel like. Afterwards, that's how I was able to figure out what was going on. Yeah, it wasn't like painful. I just was like, this feels so intense and there is so much going on that it felt very hard to continue to do it. But I told him, I was like, I don't want the epidural. I'm just voicing to you how I feel. And so the nurse comes in and she checks me, and they were amazing nurses. There was one that was kind of a little bit more annoying than the other one. She held the monitor onto me, even though she knew I wanted intermittent. She was like, no, I'm just going to hold it here. I'm just going to hold it here. And looking back, I wish I would have said, no, you're not. I wanted intermittent. Give that to me. But I didn't. And that's okay. It's not like that changed anything for me. So around 11:30, the student nurse midwife comes in and checks me. And she's like, hey, you're dilated to a 10. And I was like, wow, that went way faster than I expected. So she's like, why don't you come get on the bed and you can start pushing? And at that point, I was just so compliant. I was going to do whatever they told me to do pretty much, except have a C-section. So we got up and we started practice pushing, and I could not figure out how to push. It was so hard for me to get into a position where I felt like I could push. I tried on over the back of the bed. I tried with the bar. I tried on my side. I tried moving between all of those positions, and nothing was like working.
I assume then you didn't actually have the urge to push.
Correct. I did not.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, looking back, I wish that I would have just waited, but I didn't. So I ended up pushing for almost exactly 2 hours of pushing. And they ended up suggesting, they were like, why don't you try pushing on your back, and we'll see if you might be able to feel things differently. So I get on my back, and they're holding my legs up, and they're like putting pressure on the bottom of my feet. And that's when I started being able to figure out how, like, the right way to push. So I know that some of it was she was further down, as well as I think I just needed to feel pressure under my feet to be able to connect my brain to what was going on, since I still felt so up in the clouds.
Mm-hmm.
So I started pushing better. And I remember just being so tired. I was so tired. I didn't want to keep doing it. And I looked at the clock, and it was 1:14. And I asked them, I was like, how much longer is this going to take? And she started crowning at about that point. And they were like, if you keep pushing like you just did, you'll be done sooner than you think you are. So I was like, okay. I pushed like that one more time. And then the nurse midwife pushed the student out of the way and said, we have a dystocia. The other nurse runs and pushes a button and yells out in the hallway, hands. And then they start like turning the table upside down almost. My husband got pushed aside, and they said the midwife sticks her hand in my vagina just a little bit and pops her out. And then she was born.
Wait, sorry. I'm like picturing this in my head. If she was crowning for one contraction, meaning her head wasn't all the way out yet.
Correct.
So then the next push, her head came all the way out. How much time between when her head came out and when she called a dystocia?
It was one push. I think looking back, knowing what I know now, it wasn't a true dystocia, but they didn't like how long her shoulder was there.
So had she just like not started to turn yet?
I think that's what happened.
Because a true dystocia, I mean, typically what happens if you leave well enough alone, the head will come out, and then there's a pause. There's like a pause where you wait, and it's typically with the next contraction, baby starts to rotate themselves out, and then you get the urge to push again, and then you push them out.
Right.
But if you just are trying to pull them out all in one swoop, which I do see a lot of hospital midwives do all the time, just try to get them out. Like as soon as the head's out, they just want them out like the rest of their body instead of like waiting for that pause.
Yeah. I think that's what they did, because I remember pushing and them being like, her head is born, or the baby's head is born, because we didn't know what she was. And then pushing again. And the midwife was like, dystocia.
So right away, she didn't even like give it time. She just called it immediately.
Yes. And that impacted, just that one thing impacted so much for my fear and anxiety for my next birth. So they ended up getting her out. They're like pushing on my stomach, telling me to push. And I was like, what is even happening? I don't know what you want me to do. And so they were like, you have to push. They got in my face a little bit and said, you have to push. So I pushed while they're pushing on my belly, and they got her out very quickly. The midwife was like, she wasn't even stuck that long. She said, she was like, maybe 20 seconds. And I was like, okay. So confused. I was so confused. They put her on my belly. She had pooped on her way out. So she had meconium from her nipples down. And my husband told me that he was like, it's a little girl. Because again, we didn't know. So then they stick her on my belly. And then they realize she's having some breathing issues. And they take her away. They cut the cord. They take her away. And she did have some oxygen issues right away. So I did not get that like skin to skin immediate moment. They put her on me. I said, her name is Esther. And then she was taken back off of me, and NICU came in and put her on a CPAP. And my husband was dealing with all of that. And then they tell me, you have a 2nd-degree tear, and a doctor is coming in to make sure it's not a 3rd, because we're not entirely certain, because it was really deep, but not far. So the doctor comes in and he's like, yeah, it is a 2nd-degree tear. We're going to numb you up really well, so you're not going to have to worry about the pain. And they basically take what's like a mixture of epidural medication, and they give me a shot of that in both hip bones through my vagina.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it did not feel great.
I don't think I've ever seen anyone do that.
Yeah, he made it sound like it's very standard practice. And it wasn't, I didn't go completely numb in the legs, but I could not feel anything in my pelvic area for quite a while.
I've never heard of that. I've only ever heard of people doing lidocaine. Yeah.
Which is what I was expecting. And then this OB was like, oh no, we'll get you some epidural medication. It's fine. So the anesthesiologist had to come in and talk to me while I'm thinking about my daughter, who I don't get to be with. And my husband is now not in the room with me anymore because he went to the NICU with her. And
so you're all by yourself.
I'm all by myself. And I'm so thankful for the student midwife. She held my hand. She sat with me and talked with me. And she's like, what was your experience? Like, how was the pain management? And she was so sweet. So sweet. I liked her a lot. I don't remember her name. Oh, nope, it's Amber. Her name was Amber. But I was by myself. So she brought me my phone and she was like, I recommend like text some people, keep your mind off of it. And so that's what I'm doing while I'm shaking and they're stitching me up. And then after they stitched me up, I started having very weird feelings. Like I felt like my lips and tongue were tingling, and I did not feel well. And then my heart rate started to plummet and then skyrocket and then plummet and then skyrocket. And I have no idea what all of that was, but they got me some peanut butter and jelly crackers and like some juice to help boost my blood sugar. And then they were very concerned because I was having a late reaction to the epidural.
Mm-hmm. Like that was my first guess, was it was from that mixture of fentanyl that they just put in your pelvis.
Yeah. So it ended up clearing up all by itself. And the anesthesiologist was like, I've never heard of someone having a reaction this late to something like that. And I told them, I was like, one of the symptoms of EDS is you have weird reactions to medications like this. Every single medication I've been on, I get the weirdest reaction. And it is something to do with the connective tissue disorder that I have. I have no idea what it does, but it's one of the symptoms of it. So
weird.
So they were like, let's get you up and get you to the bathroom before, because you can only be in their room, their labor room, for 3 hours. And then they got to get you out after birth.
Right. Because they have to get the next person in.
Yeah. So they get me up to go to the bathroom and I nearly pass out, sit me back down, run and get me some more crackers. And they're like, when's the last time you ate? And I was like, 4 a.m. And then on our way to the hospital, I threw it all up. They were like, oh yeah, we definitely need to get you some more food. I was like, please get me some more food. So one of the nurses went and grabbed me one of her personal food items. And she brought me some peanut butter from her backpack because she was like, you need more protein than what we can get you right now. It's like lunchtime, and they were like, the cafeteria will be too busy and we can't bring like cafeteria food in here, but you need like protein. So she's spreading peanut butter on her cracker for me, on my crackers for me, and giving me juice. And then they finally get me up, and I was able to walk to the bathroom, still feeling so lightheaded. I'm able to go to the bathroom, and this is something crazy. Right after I gave birth to Esther, they were like, "Are we cathing her?" It's like, I said no. I immediately said, no, I'm not getting catheterized.
You just peed.
Rewinding, like before I peed, right after I had Esther, they asked if they were getting catheter stuff ready for me. And I said, no, you're not doing that. Don't do that to me.
Oh, yeah. Like, why would you? Like, why would you do that?
Yes. I don't know.
You don't have an epidural. Like, you don't, I mean, granted, they stuck the meds in your pelvis, but I mean, they were supposed to wear off rather quickly. So
yes, and they did. I think by the time I was feeling the tingling in my face is when they were starting to wear off. Anyway, so then they get me up. I'm able to make it to the bathroom without passing out. I go to the bathroom. By the time we're getting back to my bed, I was like, I'm going to pass out. They had me sit down. So I didn't end up passing out, thankfully. But I could tell the one nurse I really liked, she was worried about me moving out of their care, but she was also like, she can't keep me in. Because at this point, it's been 2 hours and 45 minutes. And they're like, you have 15 minutes left. All of our stuff is still in the room. I can't take it. So the two nurses who were in the delivery room with us, they get 2 wheelchairs. They get one for me and one for all of our stuff. And they wheel me down to our postpartum room and drop all of our stuff off. And then I finally get to go to the NICU. So I think at this point, it's been 3.5 hours after she was born, I get to go to the NICU. They only let me spend 45 minutes down there with her before they were like, we really need to get you settled into your room. And I was so emotional. I was like, this baby that I just was basically ripped out of me. I barely get to spend time with her. I didn't get to establish breastfeeding. They let me try to breastfeed for like 10 minutes in the NICU. And then they were like, we really need to keep her on oxygen. So she still was on the CPAP at that point. So it was really hard to nurse her because it like sticks way out from her face. And very, very thankful that my husband was there because he understands all of the medical things that I don't get. And so he was able to be in the NICU with her and make sure that they were taking good care of her and make sure that they didn't give her any of the things that we didn't want her to have. One of the nurses was really, really rude about the erythromycin. She didn't care about any of the other vaccinations, but she was like, I can't believe you're not giving her erythromycin. And my husband was like, my wife doesn't have any of those diseases. It's okay. I ended up going back to the hospital room and called my parents to tell them what happened. And that's when I finally started crying. It was just like, I just want to be with my baby and I'm not. So they let me go back down one more time before bed.
That's it?
Yep. Because I was a fall risk. They had, what is that called? Because I had all of those heart rate issues happen right after I had her, they sent in someone to do a heart test. What is
an echo?
Echo. Yes. They had someone come in to do an echo and that was totally fine. So I wasn't allowed to leave my room until she got there to do the echo. And she didn't get there until 7 almost. So 6 hours after she was born, they're finally giving me the echo. And then they had me pumping that whole time, but they were like, because you're a fall risk, you can't even get up to use the bathroom without calling a nurse until like tomorrow. So that was really, really hard. Tim did not come back to the room until midnight-ish, like 11, till he got kicked out of the NICU. So I had pumped a couple bottles and they took them down. to the NICU. And I mean, at that point, it's colostrum and it's barely anything. So they did end up supplementing her some formula. And by the time Tim was coming back up, she was on circulated oxygen. So she was no longer on the oxygen machine. They just like were making sure she was getting very clear flow. She was off the CPAP and on regular oxygen. That's what it was. And they were like, she's breathing on her own now. We're just giving her extra oxygen as support. And I was like, that's okay. So the next morning, they ended up bringing her to us 24 hours afterwards. Was the first time that we really got to spend time, the three of us, because their policy is a NICU baby has to be in the NICU, whether they're fine or not, for 24 hours. So even though by about 12 hours in, she was breathing totally fine on her own, they wouldn't graduate her until 24 hours. So around 1 p.m. on the 23rd, we finally get to be a family of three. And I was just so excited to have her, but then also so sad because I was like, all of these firsts, like I didn't really get to do any of the things I thought I was going to. So then they're doing all of the checks and I'm expecting to go home like that night or the next day, early in the morning. Nope, that's not what happened. We ended up being there for 5 days.
Why?
Because on day 3, she had only pooped twice because they weren't counting the meconium or
that
how
she
big
had when she came out.
Yes. Yeah, they didn't count that. So they were like, well, she didn't poop at all the first day, so that's kind of concerning. And then
Except that she did because she pooped on her way out.
Yes.
A lot.
Yeah. But that was not what the hospital pediatrician felt was safe. So especially since she was in the NICU and she had a traumatic birth and all of these things is what this hospital pediatrician is saying to me when I am like so stressed out and so anxious, already feeling all kinds of types of ways about all of this. So they ended up being like, well, we want to run some extra tests just to make sure she doesn't have this disorder that could be very dangerous for her and all of these things. And I was like, well, what disorder could she possibly have? The day we got discharged, so 5 days later, this pediatrician is like, we're going to run all of these extra tests. So because she had only pooped 4 times that day.
That day?
That day. Yeah.
What?
I think she pooped 3 times that day. They were super concerned that it was like this disorder called Wolf. I don't know. It started with Wolf. I don't remember what it was. But she was like, if it is this, then we're going to have to transport all of you to Children's and she's going to have to go under some severe like disability stuff over there. And I was like, you're telling me that this baby that I just had has this very rare disorder that I'm about to get transported to Children's for? And she was like, well, we've got to do all of the tests first. And we want all of the poops to count, but they can't be stimulated poops. Otherwise, they don't count. And I was like, oh, so now we're moving the goalpost. Okay. So most newborns that I know have a hard time pooping the first couple of days.
Well, what it typically is, especially in a breastfed baby, which I assume from 24 hours on, she was just nursing. Yes. Is 1 poop or pee diaper for every day of life. And that's not even like a hard and fast black and white. It's just sort of like a general idea. So by day 4, some, we're between 3 to 4 wet/poopy diapers.
Yes.
In a 24-hour period.
Right. This pediatrician was looking at it like that's gospel. Like by day 4, you have to have 4 pees, 4 poops.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Also, she was born at 1:19 in the afternoon. Most babies are not pooping 4 times before 1. Like that's...
Yeah, you have to give it 24 hours.
Yeah. So she was really frustrating. And by this point, my husband, he's 6'3", sleeping on this teeny tiny bed and he has a back injury. So he's miserable. I'm miserable. We're all just like stressed out and ready to go home. My husband's family lives 2.5 hours away, and they wanted to come meet the baby. They're not allowed in the hospital. So all of these things are just like compounding. And this doctor's like, here's what I want to do. I want to give her an x-ray and see if there's poop in her intestines. And then we'll know in about 4 hours if she hasn't had a bowel movement, we'll start talking about transfer to children's. And I was like, just do it. Just whatever it takes to get us out of this hospital at this point, do it. She gives her an x-ray. There's poop. Then she pooped right afterwards. So then the doctor's like, we're going to do another x-ray and make sure that it was what we saw on the x-ray. And then we'll talk about discharge. And I was like,
it's like you're trapped.
Yes, I felt like we were being held hostage, but I'm also so tired and so emotional that like I can't think the way that I should be able to. So I was like,
slept, I'm sure.
Yeah. And my husband hasn't been sleeping. And so he was like, I don't think we need to do this. And I was like, I just want to do what we can to get out of this hospital without having CPS called. Because this was also around the time that there was a bunch of people talking about how CPS was called on them because they didn't do what the hospital wanted them to do because it was COVID and all of those things. And so I was like, just do it. Just do the extra x-ray. It's okay. So they do the x-ray. She comes back in and she's like, yeah, so it was the poop that we saw on the x-ray. So we're not worried about this disorder anymore. But now we're worried about, I don't even remember what it was at this point. And my husband was like, we want to go home. We are leaving today. Do whatever it takes to get us out of here, basically. He's like, I was already discharged from the hospital. We had no right to the room that we were in anymore. So at any point they could say, you are going to be moved to this closet room because now the hospital, like Esther was still a patient for the hospital, but I was no longer a patient for the hospital. Mm-hmm. So that muddies up some of the water. So then they were like, well, with it being COVID, we just want to give her like a couple more hours and make sure everything's okay. And then the shift change happens. And the nurse that we really liked, who was taking care of us all of this day, and she was so great and so compassionate and so kind, she then leaves. And this new nurse comes in. And this new nurse and this pediatrician, I tell you, they're like best friends, cut from the same cloth, did not like her at all. And she was like, you just really need to be careful. And it's COVID and you have a fresh baby. So why push to get out? And I was like, because we've been here for 5 days. My husband had to use one paternity day to have her. And now he's already used one more. We get one more paternity day when we get home. I want to go spend that day with my family, just the three of us. And so they finally are like, we're going to discharge you today. And Tim was like, good, I'll call my dad. So he calls his dad and says that we're getting discharged today. They can come to the house that evening. And the nurse and the pediatrician overhear that. And they're like, you really should not be having people come over with a fresh baby. That is not safe. That's dangerous. It's COVID. Make sure everyone's washing their hands and all of these things. They were like really trying to get us to cancel this time. Until my husband's like, my dad's a doctor. And then they were like, oh, well, then it's fine. It's okay. We're not going to worry about it. Just make sure everyone washes their hands. And my husband was just like, okay, thanks. He was so done. I'm crying at this point. Like, just get me out of this place. I need to leave. And so we finally made it home. And then everything got much better. But I was in such a state of fear at that point that I was afraid of everything. I was scared that she had shoulder pain, that she broke her arm, like all of these irrational things. I was so scared, but I was like, I'm not depressed. I don't have postpartum depression. I don't have postpartum anxiety. I'm just worried because of all of these fearful thoughts this pediatrician planted in my head. No, that was wrong. I definitely was experiencing, I don't want to say it was postpartum depression, but it was.
Sounds like postpartum anxiety.
And it was pretty bad. And then a friend of mine pointed out, she was like, you're also going through the grieving process all over again for the miscarriage that you had. a year ago. Now you have a newborn and you're seeing all of these things that you were expecting to have sooner, later, and your body is processing all of that over again. And after she said that, I was like, you are so right. That is part of what's going on, as well as just the postpartum hormone changes and all of that. And then you throw in, my husband had to go back to work right away, and he worked for 24 hours at a time. I was spending so much time by myself. It was very hard to process and just manage my own emotions, as well as keep a baby alive that I was afraid was going to just die because of all of these things that happened during her birth. So finally started getting into the swing of things then. My parents also in that time told me that they're moving to Florida. So we moved into their house. We rent their house from them, and we're raising our children here. We're actually about to buy it from them. But so I just had so many big things happen at one time that I think my body was just, my emotions could not handle anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. So finally get into the swing of things. She has a really hard time sleeping. She was a very hard baby. She just didn't want to sleep unless she was attached to me, which I felt like physically nursing. She did not want to sleep unless she was nursing. She didn't like pacifiers. And then she started being able to move around on her own, and she went from being the grumpiest little baby to the happiest little baby. And that was so super awesome. And then we went on vacation. So she's born in January. In September, we go on vacation, and my cycle comes back. And I was not expecting that to happen because I was still feeding her once or twice at night. And so my cycle comes back, and they're like 8-week long cycles. They're very, very long. And in December, I got pregnant with our second.
When she was, let's see, how old was she then? Like 10 months, 11 months?
She was 11 months. We found out that I was pregnant the week before she turned 1.
Aw. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. You can reach me at Surrendered Birth Services on Instagram, or email me at contact@surrenderedbirthservices.com. Be sure not to miss an episode by hitting the follow button. Also, we'd love for you to leave a written review of the show so that more people's births and lives can be changed by the love of Jesus and the empowerment of accurate birth education. If you really enjoyed this episode in particular, please take a screenshot of it and post it to your Instagram story, tagging Surrendered Birth Services. If you would like to be a guest on the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, please click the link in the episode show notes to fill out your interest form. Also, if you're interested in taking my childbirth classes, birth consultations, or having me as your birth doula, please click on the link in the show notes to take you to my website for online and in-person options. Just as a reminder, this show is not giving medical advice, so please continue to see your personal care provider as needs arise. We hope you have a great week, and remember, learn all that you can, make the best plans, and then leave it in God's hands.